Welcome to podcast episode number 387. And today we're going to talk all about cleaning and cleaning management. And who better to talk to about that topic than Jeremy Gall, the CEO and founder of Breezeway. Jeremy,
Morning,
welcome to the
Jasper.
show. How are
Thank you.
you?
Very good, very good. How are you?
I am excellent. It's early morning here in beautiful tropical Panama City. And I'm excited to kick off the week here with you talking about cleaning management. Now, cleaning obviously is one of the most important aspects of any hosting business. And we're going to dive into what the main challenges are. We're going to hear about Breezeway, why Jeremy started it, and how Breezeway can help hosts manage their cleaners more effectively. So I'm excited to dive into it, but I know you've done a lot in the short-term rental space. So I want to give you an opportunity to give us an introduction and let us know
Sure.
what you've done in the space.
Sure, yeah. Started in the vacation rental space in 2006. Started a company called FlipKey, which was a marketplace for managers and hosts and owners to connect with more guests, to build up their profile through guest reviews. And then we partnered early on with TripAdvisor and Expedia and powered a lot of the vacation rental inventory on TripAdvisor for many, many years. And then left that company in 2013. So spent, I don't know, I guess that's like 7 years working on the marketing side of the business. And then after I left, I felt that operations and service was just going to get harder and harder. And I talked to lots of property managers that were friends and clients from the days at FlipKey, and I talked to them about their program. And people really struggled, not just with cleaning, but maintaining properties, making sure quality control was in place. And as travelers and guests demanded even more, that challenge just was growing. And I thought, okay, this is really interesting and we can help people. So we started Breezeway, which is, property care and operations software platform, really focused on that challenge.
Awesome. And what so FlipKey was that pretty much like an Airbnb essentially?
It was, yeah. I mean, at the time, I guess we started it pre-Airbnb, barely. At the time, HomeAway had just raised $500 million. They were in the middle of their massive global acquisition strategy to buy up lots of the vacation rental listing sites, VRBO, vacation home rentals, etc. And we started, and TripAdvisor and Expedia really wanted to get into the business. And so we were sort of their labs project to start getting into vacation rentals.
Got it. And let's talk more about Breezeway. So why did you start Breezeway?
Yeah, I think I just saw that I have a vacation home myself in South Carolina, and have a house here outside in the suburbs in Boston. And how I manage and interact with my property. And then, this was 2015, 16, thinking about this, this problem. I just felt that the whole world was moving more towards concierge service, and that guests, particularly in the vacation rental context, there was just this convergence between vacation rentals and hotels, and that guests are just going to become increasingly demanding, and rightfully so. The experience is becoming more and more important. It's not just transactional, it's the experience that you have at the property. And as a host, it's a hard thing to do at an individual property. At a property, if you're a small host, you just have one. If you're a large enterprise manager with thousands, and each one is unique, it's very difficult to dial in and make sure that experience is really good for the guest without some purpose-built tools. And that's what we try to do.
Yeah, and obviously cleaning management is probably the biggest challenge, if not one of the biggest challenges at least that hosts face, especially if you're scaling up, right? If you're managing a couple properties, then it's kind of doable. But once you get to like 5, 10, 15 properties, it quickly becomes a big challenge to manage the cleanings. But but also it's one of the most important, if not the most important aspect of operations, right? Because literally, I always use the example of one single hair can completely destroy the guest experience. So it just shows that, you know, how delicate of a thing it is in the short-term rental business, right? Making sure that your house is spotless, and the only way to really guarantee that that's going to be the case for every single check-in is to have a solid system and a solid process in place, and of course hire the right cleaners as well. And I think you know, you've been hosting for quite some time yourself, right?
We have, yeah, 10 years, 10, 11 years.
Right. So you've probably had an issue come up with cleaning in the past. I still remember the first time that I had a miscommunication with my cleaner, and the guest checked in, and the apartment was just not clean at all. The cleaner hadn't even been there, and that was a really stressful situation. Having to, you know, send the cleaners in, and the guests obviously were unhappy. So that was definitely something that we all want to avoid. But has that happened to you?
We've had some issues, but I think that, like, what's really interesting, you know, we're just, we self-manage the property. And I think when you have one property, your challenges, you know, are already, just like you said, when you're scaling up and you have 5 properties, it's just a very different business from 1 to 5 already. With one, you really are relying on your cleaner to be an extension. You are a you're a host, but you're self-managing your property, typically, if you have one property. And then you're relying on your cleaning service and your cleaning partner, really, to be an extension of you in that property. And they need to be the ones who are not only there to clean, but to deliver that experience, to check on the home, to look for maintenance issues. They're likely managing your inventory, right? They're checking and trying to understand, like, you know, are you running low on toilet paper and soaps and shampoos, sponges, paper towels, etc. Things that you really need to worry about, light bulbs, air filters, etc. Like, there's so much that goes into it. We tend to think about, I love the example as well of, like, one hair can really change the experience, but we tend to think about cleaning as truly just the cleaning piece of it, right? We're going to wipe things down. We're going to make sure that it's clean, but there's so much more that is really tied that cleaners and hospitality professionals really bring to the property, which is so important. So yes, we've had our issues, just like anyone else. I would say ours are typically, we have an unbelievable, you know, cleaning partner at the property, but I think that our issues are typically, it's an old home. We have a lot more maintenance issues than we have cleaning issues.
Yeah, and I love how you mentioned that. You know, it's not just about cleaning the home, right? The way I like to describe it is you're preparing your home to receive a specific group of guests, right? And the turnover is really dependent on that group of guests. You know, are there any children in the group? Is it a family? Is it a couple? Right? You really want to tailor that experience. And so the cleaners are not just responsible for the cleaning, but also really like preparing that home to receive that particular groups of guests that have a particular set of needs.
Yeah, I think that's super, I think that's super interesting. And I think, I love the term you use, scaling up. You know, if you're scaling up and now you've gone from a few properties, this is a business, you're managing 5, you're moving to 10 and continuing to grow. Almost everyone in the industry, this is how they started. They started really, even, you know, the folks who have hundreds and thousands, they started very small, maybe many years ago, but they started very small. And then they started managing someone else's property, and then someone else's and someone else's, and they bought another one. This is how almost everybody got there. And, you know, as you do that, it's also about that cleaning, that hospitality experience, preparing the home for the next group of people, is also about the brand that you're building as you scale up. And this is the face of your brand. These are the folks who are right on the front lines, making sure that the property is prepared the way that it should be for your brand, because you're trying to grow and you're trying to, there are no, at least I don't think so, or very few, maybe somebody can correct me, but there are very few like brand new short-term or vacation rental markets where if you're scaling up, you're the only person in town. So there's a limited amount of inventory. And if you're trying to grow, you're trying to build your business and your brand, and you're probably competing with another host or another small manager or another enterprise manager. And so delivering that experience for your brand to that guest is so important, to help you grow and to help prove to other owners that that's the service you can deliver.
Yeah, and I think you're totally right about how people get into this business, right? Breezeway is one of our partners in the Legends X program that we recently launched. And we have 52 companies that are in the program right now. And like you said, their story is almost always the same. Nobody just went from a 9-to-5 job and said one day, hey, I want to build a short-term rental management company, or I want to be a short-term rental company. It's never like that, right? It's always like they started with either their own home or maybe someone in their family that wanted to start doing Airbnb, and they help, they were helping them out. That's always how they started, and then that's how it developed. It's almost like a business opportunity that people don't really plan to build these businesses, and I think that's why tools like Breezeway are important, because what happens is when you start with one property, you do everything yourself, and then you have another one and a third one, and now it's a full-time job for yourself. But as you're adding more properties, now it becomes even more than a full-time job. You can't really manage it on your own and do all the work yourself anymore. So that's when we have to start using technology and create systems and processes. And I think Breezeway is an incredible tool to help with that, not just the cleaning, but also the maintenance side. So let's dive into a bit more about how does Breezeway aim to solve these challenges that we face as hosts scaling our companies?
Yeah, I mean, I think, simply we're trying to, I think you identified the problem exactly, and then it's just becomes even harder because just taking a step back to your analogy about the one single hair, right? Marriott or the Four Seasons, they manage and mitigate the risk of that one hair by having really detailed brand standards and really detailed cleaning protocols, which are easy to apply because they're on site and every one of these little boxes of rooms looks exactly the same. So if you're doing the same thing in every single room and you're putting the trash, you're putting the trash can under the desk in the exact same spot, like you're just increasing your confidence that one of those hairs is not going to slip by you. But when your properties are unique and then you have 5 of them or 10 of them or 100 of them that are all different, like that challenge is just super magnified. So we try to help clients manage that whole process of service and care, like every physical interaction with the property, to deliver that better experience to guests and owners. So that means, using smart technology to manage your cleaning schedule, to understand when you have groups of folks, when you have guests coming in and out of the properties, and scheduling the work that needs to be done each time in relation to those guests to make sure that you can get that done. When you're scaling up, then you might have to start thinking about, well, do I need to change my system between a checkout and a back-to-back? Because we might have to go a little faster, and maybe we can't do everything that we really want to do on a regular back-to-back. And so that's one area. And then it's also, how do I pull in all the recurring maintenance that I should do? How do I do some quality control? And how do I tie that together with the rest of the guest experience? So we integrate with the PMS systems and the locks, and locks on the doors so that folks can connect with the lock codes, connect with the reservation system, and then message the guests, tell them when their property is ready. Really try to automate a bunch of these manual steps, because there's, each time you're turning over the property, there's about 100 little manual steps that can go wrong. And as many of them that you can automate, the better off you are.
Yeah, and one thing that came to mind when you talked about the Marriott was, if the Marriott misses something in a room, they probably have another room that they can directly, make available to the guest, right? Whereas for us, it's like, if our property isn't ready, the guest is, we might just have to book a hotel for them. So the cost is so high, right?
The cost is so high. And I think that's what's amazing though, right? Like, this is why I love this. And I love sort of our mission in this, which is trying to help with that guest experience, because the guest is already attached to that home. They're so looking forward to that one unique property, right? You booked your property, you're bought in. Many times this is a drive-to destination. And you're excited for this home. The home is a big part of the destination and the trip. And so there's an attachment to that, which means that like getting that specific home ready is just, that's what has to be done. And like those cleaners have to show up. Your crew needs to make sure. And if you're scaling up, that's going to oftentimes be external service providers that you really have to coordinate with, and make sure that you understand that they know what they need to do. You're giving them clear instructions, and then you're getting clear feedback as to, how the job has been done.
And can you dive a little bit more into the Breezeway system? Like how does it actually work when people sign up? Like, do they connect their PMS? Do they send messages through Breezeway or through their PMS? And how do you communicate with cleaners? How does that work?
Yeah, it's a good question. So typically, you sign up, and if you are, if you're a small manager or you're self-managing and you're just scaling up, you will likely, you'll connect either your iCal calendar or Airbnb, or, you'll connect your main marketing channel or VRBO directly to Breezeway. If you're a larger manager and you're using a property management software system, an accounting system to keep track of your reservations, you'll link that with your Breezeway account so that we can pull in and really sync tightly with your reservation information. What I mean by that, and I think you said this best, is like, it's not just that someone's coming in, it's who's coming in and how big is the group. Do they have special requests? Are there housekeeping notes that we need to pay attention to? Do we need to do something different to prepare the property? And in a lot of times, this is where the opportunity is for the property manager to really lean in and deliver that experience. I know Jasper's coming. I know something about Jasper, and I may change how I prepare that property for you. Or if you're the owner, and this happens all the time, and this is probably a good tangible tip for the audience. If you're the owner of the property that's coming in and you only spend a couple of weeks out of the year at your property, part of the promise for that property manager is when you come, I'm going to make sure you feel like I really am taking care of your property. I'm going to make sure you really trust what I am doing for you. So I want to find out in advance, Jasper, before you come, like, how do you want the property prepared when you show up? Do you want the lights on? Do you want the windows open? Do you want certain things in the refrigerator? Like, this is the level of service that property management is moving towards, which is really experiential. It's not just, hey, Jasper, I'll make sure it's clean when you show up at your house. And if you can deliver on that consistently, you can't offer service that you can't deliver on, but if you can consistently deliver on that, it's the biggest differentiator in the business. And so we try to help people do that, pull in their reservation information, understand if it's a guest or an owner who's coming in, help you set up your workflows. We've got a great client success team that holds folks' hands, understands their business, and then helps them set up Breezeway to be tailored to their business. help set up your sort of templates and your rules, really understand your whole workflow, and then deploy it. Set it up to happen automatically. Invite your service providers, explain to them exactly what needs to happen. And then yes, also, we have a messaging product where we can message to the guests, which we think is super, super important, which is, texting guests before arrival, right, is important, of course, but we think there's a ton of value in the experience of communicating with a guest shortly after arrival to make sure that everything is okay. And if it isn't, offering service to help, or even if everything is okay, but they need additional services, really like turning into a concierge during the stay, we think is critical. And so it's tied closely to the operations. That's a mouthful, but hopefully some good info in there.
Yeah, you mentioned messaging. So what I'm thinking is if you have a PMS, and most people use PMSs to send like triggered messages like check-in instructions and welcome messages and stuff like that. Is that that's something that Breezeway can do as well?
We do. We think about it it's a great question, and here's how we think about it. We think that the PMS and the triggered emails makes a lot of sense for booking confirmation and for re-engagement. Like most people are using their PMS as a marketing channel as well. And that really becomes like your marketing and client communication channel is tied closely to your PMS. When you get right, there's a shift as you get right to the stay, where now the person is, maybe it's 12 hours, 24 hours before the stay, and then during the stay, where your communication with the guest switches over from marketing to an operational workflow. Because while you're there, if I want to get in touch, if you want to talk to me, Jasper, while you're at the property, very likely the subject of your communication is service related. You want something, or you need something, or you have a question that's directly related to the property and directly related to your stay. We're not pen pals while you're visiting. It's likely going to turn into an operational task. And so it's only SMS based. We don't touch the email and booking confirmations like that. But when you arrive, you can switch over to SMS, and you can text and communicate with guests via Breezeway that way to really engage during the stay. Same as this has become very standard for hotels because it's just a perfect medium during the stay. It shows attention, it can be personalized, but it's asynchronous. It's not disruptive. You can respond to a text if you want and feel comfortable, or you can ignore it as a guest, and that's fine. But I really reached out to you, whereas email just feels really transactional.
Sure. Yeah, and you mentioned something I think it's important as well to think about is the different phases of communication, right? We have like the pre-stay, where it's essentially it's like a sales thing, right? The goal of that communication is like, hey, we want the guest to book, right? And then you could even say even after the booking is confirmed, they can still cancel it. So you could still argue we're still kind of in the sales process. Once the guest checks in, it's fully, the goal is then to just provide the best experience possible for the guest. And then the third phase, after they check out, then the goal is really to, number one, get the review, but then number two is also like encourage them to come back. Right. So we have those three phases that I think are really important to understand, like what's the goal of the communication during those three phases. One question about the communication with the cleaners, because this is about communication with the guest, but how can hosts communicate through Breezeway with the cleaners? Like, let's say you get a booking, like does an automatic message go out to the cleaner?
Yeah, exactly. So all communication with cleaners and maintenance folks and all your service personnel, who's ever helping you, maybe your on-site manager, your handyman, if there's an issue, or your property manager, depending on how you're structured, all of that flows through Breezeway. So you can create a new task. Your cleaners or your housekeeping professional service providers will get an automated alert. They'll get an email, a text notification, a push notification through Breezeway about their new cleaning, about their job. They can accept or decline that. Then they can start the job. They can give you tangible feedback from their phone, telling you pictures and communication about how the job is going, what they've done. Importantly, they can tell you if something's wrong, which is really useful. Maybe there's been some damage at the property. Maybe there's something small that needs to be fixed. They can communicate back and forth with you. They can comment on tasks. There's a full communication platform for the service personnel so that you can tie that. And what's really helpful is, especially those folks who are scaling up, unless you're using something like Breezeway, what you might be doing is maybe you have a WhatsApp, conversation with your housekeepers, and you're going back and forth, and or you're texting, and there's just this like open texting back and forth. But the problem is that communication is not tied to the actual cleaning. So that probably works fine when you have one property. But now when you have 5, I'm trying to figure out okay, which cleaning are you talking to me about? And what's happening here? And now have we resolved that issue or not? So you really move into a world where task management is much more important, and really, really dialing in and optimizing that task management is key. But communication about it's huge. So yes, most of that happens on platform and can be tied back to the task.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the WhatsApp group. That's exactly how I used to manage my my very first property back in 2012. I don't know if I started. I think WhatsApp might have not been around, but as soon as I started using WhatsApp, I created a group with the cleaner in there, and that's exactly how we communicated. So, um, awesome. So this is awesome. Yeah, I've never used Breezeway personally, but I've heard so many good things from our students, and that's really why I wanted to connect with you and learn a bit more, because we've just been receiving such great feedback. People seem to really love your product. So congrats on that. For the people that are listening now and they wanna give Breezeway a try, or they want to learn more, what's their best action step?
Yeah, they can always, it's breezeway.io. And you can learn a ton through the site. You can really get a good feel for the kind of service that we provide and see if it resonates with you. And folks can see if they think it'll be really helpful to their business. Or they can email vip@breezeway.io and let us know. If they're part of the Legends program, they should definitely mention that and say that's where we heard from it, or if they heard from the podcast, we'd love to know and make that connection. But they should just reach out. And yeah, people are finding it. I think, we've been working at it for years. There's a lot of functionality it's a powerful platform, but in many ways, we're still just getting started. My feeling is we're just at the beginning of how hard this job is going to get to be, because the expectations are going to continue to rise from our guests and people you don't necessarily have to meet those expectations, right? You could choose not to, but people who do lean in and do that are going to be the ones who are in the best position to grow their business and be super successful. And I think, the more advanced functionality we can continue to deliver to automate and smooth out that process, the easier, we can just help people out a lot.
What's the process to get started with Breezeway? Is there an
We
onboarding?
we have to get you. We got to get you signed up. You sign up, you'll end up. We like to do a hands-on demo with folks as they sign up, because we want to learn about their business. There's just different ways you can work with the system. Maybe messaging is important to you. I like the way you set that up in 3 different phases. Maybe you have that covered depending on the tools you're already using. So we like to talk to people, understand their business, provide some background about the product. Following that, then we just get you rolling. You get assigned a client, a client success person to work with, to do personal one-on-one training with folks who use the system, because we really want them to be successful. And then you're off to the races.
Sweet. So if you're listening and you want to check out Breezeway, breezeway.io is the website, and that's where you can get in touch with the team. Any final thoughts, any final words before we wrap this up?
No, just thanks so much. We love we love talking to people in the community about the challenges that they're facing. We, as I said, at first focused on the marketing side of the business, then we moved to the operation side of the business. We've built this project really in response to the needs of the community and the hosts and property managers we work with. So reach out. We'd love to talk to you, even if it's not a product that's responsive to you or you're not ready for it yet. We'd love to just learn about your business and chat with you. So thanks so much for having us, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time. And for the listeners, thanks for listening. And we'll be back next week with the next episode.